I wore a pitch black beard when I got back. It looked pretty shoddy, as if somebody had taken my head and dumped it in mud. Thinking I must get to look like myself again, I shaved the beard. Not that I'm too fond of the face beneath the beard. I've been tired of this face for a long time. I look at it as little as possible, even when I shave. When I go to the bathroom, I look at the can, not the mirror. I feel that this is a face, not like Helen of Troy's that launched 1,000 ships, but only has launched millions of tickets. Therefore, it is not what I like to see. I would like to have a facade behind a facade, and therefore I especially dislike my face. I never did like it, even when it was pretty. I liked only what I hoped was behind the face, and wished for and longed to be. I liked what I thought I was inside, not what I appeared to be from skin side. I have often thought, supposing I had been a little dwarf with short fingers, with crooked legs, perhaps with a hump on my back, supposing I had been so ugly as to have people revolted and repelled by the sight of this individual Flynn. What would have happened to me then? Suppose a little cripple had come out of the womb, with arms and legs askew. I wonder what kind of fight I might have put up in life. I wonder if my spirit would have been the same. Prior to self-misuse, and I worked hard at that, they said I was beautiful, a strange appellation for a man. But I have always felt that my face and appearance did not reflect the real self, and that my face observed it from view, and that my face obscured it from view. Growing up in the shadow of an intellectual and distinguished father, science was in my breeding. Curiosity was in my every reflex, and curiosity was my principal addiction. The curious man inside me wandered over the world in quest of life's answers, but my face stood in my path. True, it became my fortune, but it turned me from the things I wanted to be. I learned indifference to the looks, so that many I learned indifference to the looks that so many women of the world have found so engrossing. Glamour, beauty. No wonder I've punished myself and put lines in my face and a map of experience on my forehead. It is some consolation to hear people say, now, that the years have given me at last the look of a head that might have something inside of it. That's why I like a picture of me that was printed in Esquire a couple of years ago. My face was wrinkled, the brow was hard lined, a bit bewildered still, but the look of an experienced man. Back in Hollywood, I resumed picture making and batting around with my special pal, McAvoy. Freddie and I were delighted one evening at the Macombo to see an attractive brunette tangling in a brawl with an equally stunning blonde. We went as close as we could get because these girls were putting on a round by round brawl, neither letting up. The blonde on top 1 minute, brunette on top the next. They bit, they scratched, and took good wrestling holds. Wonderful, isn't it, Freddie? Excellent. The girls were separated, and we went back to our table. Just then, a friend rushed up to me and asked, Errol, you were there. What was it about? Damned if I know. I didn't know. I don't know either of them and don't give a damn. All I know is that when they were on the floor with their legs up in the air, I could tell which one was the blonde and which was the brunette. At that instant, I looked around. There was the brunette glaring at me. So you don't give a damn, she screamed. A waiter passed by, bearing a tray on which were 2 raw eggs. The excited girl picked up the plate containing those 2 egg yolks and sent them crash right onto my head. I put my hands to my hair. A lot of yellow came down with them. At last, I've had it, I thought, making it histrionic. Making it histrionic, my brains. 4 waiters jumped on her to pull the girl away from me, and 2 gathered around me to clean up my wandering brains. The headlines made merry of it all across the country. Flynn laid low with Spanish omelet. Marge Eddington ran much of my life. She was in my employ as secretary and general factotum. One reason I had her around overseeing Mulholland was because she sided with me in any disputes I had with Nora. She and Nora fought steadily. Doubtless, our sporadic marriage relationship could have done Nora no good. The uncertainty which she had as my wife transformed her, and I couldn't. The uncertainty which she had as my wife transformed her, and I couldn't blame her for losing much of the sweetness she originally had. The fact is, I would never be a boon to any woman dreaming of domestic bliss, monogamy, serenity, composure, playing bridge, and doing dishes. I had, after all, met Nora during the rape trial and agreeably married her shortly thereafter. There was little in the situation to make me inwardly convivial to our marriage. In 1949, we were divorced. Soon thereafter, she married Dick Hames. A little later, while visiting with her and my youngsters, I talked to her about the strange turn of her temperament, for which I suppose I was in part responsible. She said, "You and your friends gave me such a sense of inferiority. I rebelled against it. I suppose I should have gone along with it, but I couldn't." It was one of those rare moments of self-revelation. After work one evening, my lawyer telephoned. "Nora wants full custody of both children." "She does she?" I felt the blood rush to my face. "What can we do?" "I don't know." He laughed a little nervously. "I just don't know." Lawyers always laugh nervously when they're in a quandary. For a few seconds, the conversation hung in pauses and uncertainties. "You're my lawyer, aren't you? What can I do?" I was frantic. "I don't know." "Well, I know what I'll do." I slammed the phone with the kind of crash that a few vodkas can bring out in a man. I swigged another glass. Rage rose in me, working up from the pit of the stomach and coming out in what must have been a face flushed from the neck up. This was too damned much. Get my dough, throw me on the untender mercy of those California courts which always ruled with the woman. So, Nora was fit to handle 5 kids and I none? God damn it, no. The Aussie was up in me. I rushed out the door. I jumped into my car, started backing out. Ugh, what was that? I felt the tire go over something. I got out. There was my pet dachshund puppy, Grenna, squashed flat. All of an instant, my anger left me. The rest of the night I spent in tears, burying her. Grenna may have prevented me from getting into the worst jam of my life, from doing the one thing to my little girls that I never wanted to do to them, hurt them in any way. My affairs with Nora and Dick settled in other ways, in other days. Now all is well with Nora and me. Our girls are a powerful bond. As to Dick Haynes, whose marriage with Nora has come and gone, I'd send him a new Cadillac every year for Christmas if I could afford it. But we were all younger then, and our passions were high. Since then, Nora has put flowers sometimes on little Grenna's grave, and perhaps our feud was buried there. While making a picture in the Rocky Mountains for Warner's, I first met my leading lady, Patrice Wymore, of the New York stage. She was attractive, warm, wholesome. She was short-sighted and wore glasses. The more time I spent with her, acting, conversing, courting in an odd way, the more it seemed that she typified everything I longed for, or thought I longed for. I was deeply impressed to see her pick up some instrument and dig a hole in the ground, place corn and potatoes in aluminum foil, and bake them in a fire under the bright Arizona stars. The Kansas home-baked food tasted fantastic, and I looked at Pat with wonder. What was she doing around the theater when she could cook like that, in the ground itself? I still don't know what that dinner of baked corn and potatoes is going to cost me. Patrice and I have been separated for about 2 years. But at that time, it seemed to me that this down to earth life was what I wanted. Back to the soil, back to this, back to that, back to back. I wanted to see a lot of Pat. I invented a role for her, that of homebody, housefrau, sweet domestic thing, a stupid course. It is better to evaluate a woman for what her personality is, rather than invent one to take the place of what she really is. Pat was of the theater, but I chose to fancy that she might truly be the mistress of a house. The time came when I believed I badly wanted marriage. One special woman, lonely, lost, never far from despondency, I waged the inward battle for self discovery. Maybe the special woman could bring this about. Maybe there was a husbandman somewhere inside of me, and I must ferret him out and let him live. It was all working up in me, like a new role. Patrice typified everything that I was not, and I presumed that she knew what my life was, since my life had been an open newspaper. She knew the kind of man she was marrying. She must know that the leopard can't change his spots, especially if he is full grown. And if she knew that and wanted to take a chance with me, I wanted to take it with her. She had all the qualities I admired so much and had never found. She could cook Indian curry. She could dance. She could sing. She was reserved. She had beauty, dignity. With all those homebody qualities that go towards making a sensible and lasting marriage, if marriages are sensible, which I question, I thought I would give it a try. Flynn determined at last to find out what other men have a sensible marriage. Although we didn't know each other well, I asked her what she saw in me. Pat looked troubled. "I feel sorry for you," she said. "Well, we decided to marry in Europe. It seemed to me that for a girl who had never been abroad, this should give her a great deal of pleasure and happiness. It was wonderful to have a legitimate wedding for a change. First, there was a civil ceremony at Monte Carlo. This was relatively quiet, with only the press of all France there. My parents were on hand. At last, I was doing something legal, and it pleased them. Pat's parents were there. So was Fred McAvoy, many business associates, and representatives from Prince Rainier's court. The mayor of Monte Carlo gave us a Medal of Honor. That was only a preliminary. On October 23rd, 1950, Pat and I were married at the French Lutheran Church of the Transfiguration in Nice. This was complete with flowers, canopies, appropriate congratulations from all over the world, and a cordon of French cops holding off a crowd of 3,000 outside the church. The wedding cake was enormous. I even ate a piece myself and posed for a picture enjoying the first fruits of what truly seemed to me to be a first marriage. Patrice looked beautiful. Her dress had been designed by a stage and film specialist, and she was radiant throughout. After the ceremony, there was a mild earthquake of a reception at the Hotel de Paris in Nice. Outside, the French milled as if the Paris Opera House was burning down. It was, for me. In the midst of the hilarities, a friend came to me, pale-faced, and whispered, "There's a man at the door who wants to see you. He has some kind of a warrant for your arrest." "Look, pal, I'm getting married now. No gags. This is on the level. Go and take the papers for me if you mean it," I said. I still thought he was ribbing, as friends are apt to do. He went to the door and brought the papers back to me. I read the charge. Sure enough, it appeared that I had lustfully, lasciviously, and carnally had intercourse with a young lady aged 17 named Denise Duvivier. This crime had allegedly been committed on board my yacht, the Zaka, a year earlier. I must answer the charges at once, in the Monaco town hall, where I had just been civilly married. Tis, tis, tss, tss. It takes some ladies so long to realize they have been raped. I couldn't place this girl or this situation at all. Another utter phony. I looked around, the paper in my hand. Several ambassadors were present. I smiled at an admiral. I looked at my mother, who stood a few feet away, talking with someone. My wife, beside me, looked gorgeous. She whispered, "You look troubled, Errol. You look troubled, Errol." "No trouble at all. Just another rape charge." "What?" "Yes, my dear. This one is French and has 17 summers behind her." "I don't believe it." I kissed my wife. That's the kind of support a man needs. At the front gate, the word was out. A newspaper pal rushed up to see me. He was a chap I knew and trusted, and he asked what I intended doing about the charge. I would answer it, I told him. "You know what you're doing, don't you? In Monaco, there's no such thing as bail." "What?" I choked. "No bail." "If the rap is a bad one," said my friend, "you have nothing to worry about. But if not, don't be a dope. Don't go there." "What if it's another frame-up?" I asked. "Don't go there," he urged. I continued to eat my wedding cake, wondering. Legally, if I didn't want to go back to Monaco, I didn't have to. But for my own self-respect, I simply had to, much as I loathed another scandal. I decided, for the time being, to let the wedding reception go on. After the reception, Pat and I returned to the Zaka for our bridal night. The yacht was anchored, a few hundred yards out, at Villefranche. In the morning, I heard a sound like 16 claps of thunder. I thought an atomic bomb had exploded. I ran on deck and found the Zaka surrounded by the American Navy. They were firing guns and shooting rockets. From the loudspeaker, a voice called out, "Hear this now," repeated several times. Then, "Errol Flynn just got married. Hear this now. Leave him alone." The laughing voice signed off with one more warning. Hear this now. Stay away from that hot yacht." That was the signal for every boat to come around. As the Navy men went by in shore boats, about 60 sailors to a craft, they shouted, "Hi, Errol, how was it?" I had sought a quiet refuge in the world aboard my yacht, and here was the fleet shooting off rockets and mouths. Pat came up on deck and waved. The sea churned up as only the American Navy could make it do. They kept shouting all kinds of funny and suggestive nonsense. "Anything new, Errol? How'd it go?" I waved back weakly. "Never better, sailor." Last night, a wedding reception and a charge of rape. Now the fleet, guns saluting. I went ashore that night and took Pat to a quiet restaurant along the waterfront. We had hardly got through the escargots when in came the Navy again. One more salutes and congratulations, so that we were hurried through our food. It started to rain as we walked out. We went to the launch, tied a few feet off, intending to board it and get away from the latest maelstrom of screaming jokesters. No one ever believes I want some peace, quiet, the soft moments of life. I was wearing a pair of rubber loafers. In my hurry, in the rain, I took a flying leap into the launch. My feet went up into the air higher than my body, and the bottom part of my spine came down on a corner of the engine box. I felt a searing pain. That was all I knew. I passed out. I didn't know it then, but Pat, in a panic, got the Navy boys to take me out to one of the surface ships of the United States fleet. They had to get me into a breeches buoy and pass me from boat to boat. I was carried there practically unconscious. Faintly, I could hear the sailors on the U.S. aircraft carrier saying, "Gee, what a night, Errol." "Nothing like getting married, eh, kid?" "Bust your back, Errol?" "Some guys get all the luck," etc., etc. All intended to be congratulatory, all intended as a compliment. About a week later, I became fully conscious, mostly of pain. It was agonizing. The third, fourth, and fifth lumbar vertebrae were fractured, and the ilium connected to these vertebrae also was broken. I was flat for at least a month, unable to move. That accident took much of the gusto, the bounce, the guts out of me. But not for long. I'm no longer able to take a long jump on a horse over a wall at full gallop. I don't feel like leaping from turrets over old castles. I've reached the age of caution, I think. Often, since then, I have wished I were built like a squid, so I would have no trouble with my spine. I returned to the Zaka. Pat nursed me back to some degree of mobility. While I convalesced, there was growing interest all over France in the charge of rape still waiting for me at the Monaco town hall. To make it look really dire for me, the young lady announced that if she won her suit for 1,000,000 francs, about $3,000, she would give the sum to charity. Charity? Now, really. A photograph was published in the French newspaper which showed this girl in my arms at the rail of the Zaka as I held her with a passionate embrace. We were both clothed. Where had this picture come from? Letting the anchor come up on the Zaka and returning to Monaco was the only brave thing I ever did in my life. We sailed into Monte Carlo harbor. Journalists from all over were on hand for a field day. They have what they call a confrontation in Monacan law. If an accusation is leveled, the magistrate has the accusing party confront the accused. I pushed my way through the crowd with Pat. When she put her hand in mine, I clung to it as if it were my last link with the other world. The police, dressed in their blue and scarlet uniforms, looked big and sobering. We walked into a dark hall near to where we had only recently been married. I saw the judge, a bald, lean, white-haired man. I had been told he was furious because of my remissness in getting around to answering the charge. I had a lawyer with me, but he wasn't allowed inside. They asked me if I wanted an interpreter. I didn't, but I said yes. The charge was read. I was struck with one thing. It said that I had forced this girl into a shower and there wreaked my wicked ways upon her. I had pressed a button, it said, and an electrically operated door had swung shut behind her. Great idea, I said to myself. Wish I'd thought of it. Except there wasn't anything like that on board the Zaka. The judge listened, neither friendly nor unfriendly, to my denial. He gave the order to bring in the accuser. The door opened slowly. I looked at the floor, wondering who was going to come in. I saw a policeman's boots and the cuffs of his trousers. Then, oh shades of California, same scene 7 years later, but there was the same pair of flat heels, the same bobby socks. But those legs. Oh no, not those long, black, hairy legs. Now I knew I was innocent. Drunk, sober, drugged, partly insane. These were not the legs that Flynn would have next to his. I looked up higher. Pigtails again. Could lightning strike twice in the same place? My confidence returned. She looked shyly at the judge, but not at me. I had never seen her before. She repeated her story and said that it was indeed she in the photo. I played the part of my own lawyer detective. I respectfully asked His Honor to come to the boat, purposely brought to Monte Carlo for examination. I wanted him to see the shower, what a horribly cramped place it was to have your way with anybody. I wanted to ask, but, Your Honor, have you ever raped anybody standing up in a shower? Do you know what might be the difficulties? I checked myself. Outside, there was the usual milling mob which generally attends my rape trials. The judge, followed by a large entourage, went to my yacht. The judge was at my side as I asked the engineer, through the interpreter I didn't need, if there was anything to the story of the electrical shower. Of course there wasn't. Point 1 for Flynn. I showed His Honor the shower. It's a funny little cubicle, slightly larger than an upright coffin. The judge experimented. He turned a tap and immediately got his suit wet with a stream of salt water. Frowning thoughtfully, he stepped out of the shower and took a last reflective look at the cubicle. I knew just about what went through his mind. That was the instant of decision. Not even Flynn could have his wickedness in there. Back in the court, he dismissed the case. A grateful France applauded the decision. A grateful Flynn made some inquiries about that photograph and was able to reconstruct how and when it was made. Sightseers and visitors were always snapping pictures of me and of my yacht. This photo had been taken about a year earlier. apparently carefully planned. The girl had swum out to the boat, climbed on board, stumbled against me, and thrown herself on my chest so that I caught her. On shore, by prearrangement, a camera snapped us at the moment when she appeared to be in my arms. A bit of pretty skillful work. I was in Los Angeles when I received the stunning news that Freddie McAvoy lost his life trying to save his wife in a storm off the coast of Western Africa. I had warned him about these waters. They were dangerous. He had been sailing around the Mediterranean, but there's a big difference between that kind of seagoing and what it can be along the coast of Africa. I had a single motor in a Dutch-built yacht. The spars and rigging were light. In order to turn a dishonest penny, or an honest one, according to your viewpoint, he had loaded his ship with 110 cases of Scotch whiskey. On board, he also had valuable papers of mine. His wife's furs and jewels were aboard, just about all he possessed. The crew of the yacht consisted of 3 German displaced persons, Freddie's wife, a maid, 2 dogs. One of the Germans was an engineer, the other 2 crewmen. I wanted to loan him a Cuban seaman in my employ, but my boy took a look at the rigging of Freddie's yacht and refused to go. Clearly, this wasn't a boat intended to ride in high seas. There was a big blow. When the storms broke, it must have flooded the engine and knocked out the sail. No one quite knows what happened. Freddie lashed his wife and the maid to the mast. The boat ran up on a reef. Some Arabs on shore saw the distress, but could do nothing. Freddie decided to swim to shore for help. How he made it through those enormous seas, I don't know. On shore, he couldn't get any assistance or make himself understood. He decided to swim back to the smashed-up ship. He cut loose from the mast his wife and the maid. The maid went down immediately. He and Claude started swimming for shore. Freddie could have made it again, but he saw that Claude was behind him. He returned to get her. He tried to tow her to shore. The rollers were high. He was within a few feet of land, and hands were actually outstretched to pick them up. Then a huge wash carried them back, and they were never seen alive again. I like to think of Freddie making that gesture. It was really unlike him. He was such a selfish fellow, not one to lay down his life for anyone, not really heroic. And yet, as I have always said, you never can tell what people will do in special circumstances, especially when you love, truly love. My friendship with Freddie was deep, a real sporting relationship. He made life appear a thing of gaiety. He dominated most situations in which he figured. When he was with the Olympiads, he even dominated their sessions. He was an international playboy. His profession? Anything. He made a fortune. He married wealth. He raced cars. He was a leader in his set. People like me had to work. Freddie didn't in order to live high. There was a certain gift which not many have. I had been close to him for 20 years, and his passing was a hard blow to me. I could have understood if he went out like a cheat, a gambler, a ne'er-do-well, but not in that gallant way. I was in the middle of a picture when I heard the news. I called the State Department in Washington to ask for an investigation. They cooperated. Searchers found his body. It was only recognizable by a belt I had given him. It had a gold buckle on it, which he'd swiped from me.